Hey YouTube, Jason Hart here. Just gonna do a quick YouTube video about my glove selection from Kuiu for hunting purposes. So I use two different gloves from Kuiu. I use both the Axis hybrid, the Axis glove and the Yukon glove. So the Axis glove is, more of a mid-weight, not super cold temperature type of glove. I would consider it more of like a hiking type of glove, just to protect your gloves. The Yukon glove is definitely a much warmer glove and much more rain resistant, heavier, definitely bigger type of glove. And I would say for colder seasons, down into the 30s potentially. The Axis glove is only $59, not a bad price considering how good a quality Kuiu is. In terms of the pros of the Axis glove, I feel like the biggest pro for me is that when I'm hiking into a spot, when I'm hiking that mile to get to a place where I want to hunt, I'm hunting around brown bears, black bears, big predators that can kill you. So I want to be able to access my pistol and be able to shoot my pistol. And one of the biggest things for me is that the Axis glove keeps my hands warm when I'm hiking, even if it's in colder weather. But it allows me to access my pistol and to actually get my finger into the trigger hold. And the Yukon glove, unfortunately, I can get it in there, but I have to like maneuver it around, and not something I'm going to be doing when there's a big old brown bear chasing me. So that's the biggest pro from my perspective of the Axis glove. The cons of the Axis glove, it feels a little more slippery to me. If you can see, there's these little black spots on the tips of your fingers, and I think that's to be able to access your phones and to use your phone while you're out hunting. I don't do that. There's no service where I hunt, and to be honest, I think it adds slipperiness to the glove. So even if I'm handling my pistol, it does feel a little dangerous because the glove's a little slippery, especially if it's raining. There have been complaints about the Axis glove that I read online, and the complaint is about the seam on the fingers. So if you can see the seam on these fingers, it's like right where your fingernails go. And just doing this, that seam catches on my fingernail. And I think that's what people are complaining about. They feel like this is super uncomfortable, especially if this is a tighter fit glove for you. And that is the biggest complaint that I've seen on the Kuiu site related to these gloves. For me, it's not a big enough of a thing that I really even think about it. Honestly, when I'm out hunting, I think I fidget with that quite a bit, just sitting there waiting for something to show up. So it's not that big of a deal to me personally, to be honest. In terms of the Yukon is definitely a higher class glove. It costs $119. Definitely a thicker glove meant for colder weather. And honestly, like just sitting here spending 4 or 5 minutes making this video, my glove is sweating already in this glove. So the pros about the Yukon from my perspective is that it's definitely warm. So if you're hunting in somewhere like Alaska and it's 30 degrees or 20 degrees, this glove is going to keep your hand much warmer than something like the Axis. I mean, it's definitely meant for colder weather. It's got the Yukon rain material with the DWR, so it's definitely pretty water resistant. When I use this, I don't think the inside of the glove got wet at all except for perspiration. So definitely a warm glove, water resistant. So if you're hiking around and it's raining out, you got to get across some of the trees and you're getting dew or water on your glove from the trees. It's a water resistant glove. It doesn't soak up the water super easily. The biggest con for me with the Yukon is the fact that you can't easily put your finger into the trigger of a gun. I mean, I have to like maneuver my finger to get in there a little bit, and it's not the best thing for me personally if I'm going to be out in the middle of Alaska with a bunch of grizzly bears trying to hunt. So I want to be able to access it quickly, be able to get my finger in the trigger without any trouble, and to be able to discharge the weapon if I need to. And unfortunately, I feel like the Yukon doesn't do that. So what I end up doing is I end up actually using the Axis glove to hike into the places that I'm going. That way it's two different things. One, I can get my finger in the trigger and I can shoot the pistol if I need to. But the second thing is if it's wet and I need to maneuver around trees and those gloves get wet, it's okay because I have a second pair of the Yukon to keep my hands warm when I'm hanging out where the animals are, where I'm expecting the animals to be. And those gloves are going to be dry, and it'll allow my other set of gloves to dry out in the meantime, hopefully. The cons for me from the Yukon is these things are way too hot for hiking. I tried to use these once hiking into a moose hunt, and I wasn't even hiking very far, but my hands just started sweating, and if it's 20 or 30 degrees out, the last thing you want to do is sweat. So I already suffer with, fingers and toes getting cold, so for my hand to be sweating in 25 to 30 degree weather was like an absolute no-no. I had to stop hiking. I had to change my gloves and get something that wasn't as warm because I don't want to perspire and get cold when I'm sitting around and don't have blood pumping. Get a little specific into the size that I use. I use both a large for both the Axis and the Yukon. I'll give some photos of how those fit on my hands. I don't have super big hands, to be honest with you, but I feel like the large fits me pretty well. In terms of hand size, when you measure it from the wrist to the top of your finger, it's about 7.5 inches for me. And then when you measure around the knuckles, it's about 8.5 inches for me. I'll show you some pictures just so you can see exactly how I'm measuring it and you understand. I haven't had any issues with these gloves. I feel like they fit pretty well. One other issue related to the Axis gloves that I hate is that there's no buckle to connect the two gloves. So your gloves are just, in your pack, not connected. You have to like fold them together. If you're like me, you're not always the most diligent person about doing that, and sometimes you gotta pilfer through your bag to find both gloves. Wish all pairs of gloves had the nice little belt buckle that the Yukon gloves have, just like that. And then that way you never lose your gloves. You know exactly where they are. You find one, you get them both. Hope this is helpful for you, and hopes it help you understand some of the pros and cons about the Axis and the Yukon.